Today we're going to take a look at varnish on a UV printer. I'm using the ArtisJet 3000U Freebird, but the steps and tips I'll show you will work on most UV printers. When I first started, I struggled with understanding varnish. I didn't really get how raised varnish works, how you create matte effect, or why everyone kept talking about spot colors when it wasn't clicking for me in CorelDRAW. So in this video, I'm going to break it down simply. I'll show you how to work with varnish, how to get different effects like raised or matte, and how to set up and save your files properly, all without using spot colors. If varnish has ever confused you or felt more complicated than it should be, this video will help. Let's get into it. So I already have my design ready in CorelDRAW. First, you'll notice I've created a border for a bleed. If you want to know more about bleeds, you can check out our previous video on prepping files for the UV printer. Next, I group all my wording and rename it as raised varnish because we want this part to be raised. Then, I've already named the strip in the middle as varnish only. This will be gloss. I click on the first rectangle, which is the product, and rename it jig/product. Then I click on the outer rectangle and rename it invisible jig. For the invisible jig, I give it a no-fill border by right-clicking on no color in the color section. Now it's invisible, but it's still there, so it won't mess with alignment. Next, I hide the varnish and the raised varnish layers, so only the jig/product is visible. Then I go to File, Export, and export it as a TIFF to the desktop and rename it jig. Make sure to check the width and height when you export. It needs to stay the same for every layer. Here it's 166 by 227. After that, I unhide the varnish only layer and hide the jig layer. Now only the varnish is visible. Export this as a TIFF and rename it varnish only. Check that the size stays the same, still 166 by 227. Then I hide the varnish only layer, unhide the raised varnish layer, and export it as a TIFF, renaming it raised varnish. Again, make sure the size is consistent, and that's it for prepping the files. Next, I'll show you how to import these into the ArtisJet workstation and set up the raised effect. Now we're in the ArtisJet workstation. First, I go to the top left and select New Job, then go to File, New, and type in the size of my UV bed. This ensures the job matches the area we'll be printing on. Next, I import my jig file and click Show Metric Panel so I can see the placement on the bed. Then I check the size to make sure it matches what we exported from CorelDRAW. In this case, 166 by 227. I also set the X and Y axis to 10 to give a margin from the edges. Then I hit Print, go to Properties and select White Only. This sends the job to the workstation. At the workstation, I click on the job and select Print. This prints the jig onto the bed, and now we can place the product on the bed using the jig so it's perfectly aligned. This prints the jig onto the bed. We can import the varnish only file, the strip shape. We select to selected frame. This is important because it keeps the varnish strip exactly in the same position as the jig. so everything stays aligned. Next, we go to Print, Properties and select Varnish Only. This sends the job to the workstation. Once the product is placed on the bed using the jig, we click on the job and hit Print. This will print the varnish layer in perfect alignment. Now we're going to import the raised varnish file. In the workstation, go to New Job, Import, and select the raised varnish file. Then go to Print, Properties, and select Varnish Only. This sends the job to the workstation. Once the product is placed on the bed, go to the workstation, click on the job, right-click, and choose Set. In the settings, you'll see 2.5D texture embossed. Click the drop-down panel and select Small Embossed. There are a few embossed qualities you can choose from, but in this case, we'll use Small Embossed and set it to bidirectional. Finally, click Print, and the raised varnish will be printed with the embossed effect. And that's it! That's how I prep my files in CorelDRAW. I print the jig and apply both the varnish only and the raised varnish layer on a UV printer. Following these steps will help you get perfectly aligned varnish layers every time without needing any spot colors. And in the next video, we're going to dive into Bec One Go. That's braille, embossed and color in one go. I'll explain exactly how it works and how to set it up using spot colors so you can create advanced prints just in one pass. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll check you in the next one.